Hello, everybody, and welcome to our February 2025 traditional book club at our new time. And today we are talking about James McBride's The Heaven and Earth Grocery Store. Now, I did get a couple of emails from a few of you. Um, how should we approach this? Do you want me to talk a little bit about it first, or should we just dive in because we only
Well,
have an
who
hour?
didn't read it? Who didn't read it?
Did someone not read it?
I don't know. So we don't. Yeah, I don't. If we didn't, if anybody didn't read it, I understand that. But if we all read it,
I found the first time that I read this book, I after I finished, I really enjoyed it. Um, and I was asked from friends, so what was it about? And I was like, what? Well,
yeah,
because it's got so many
very
moving parts. It's
confusing.
got so many moving parts, right? So we open with the book, which I love the opening. I've but we open with the book. It's night in the early 1970s, and they're building new buildings and stuff in this small town of Potsdam, Pittsburgh, no, Pennsylvania, and one's a city, one's a state. I know, and they find the remains of a body, and along with the remains of this body, they find a mezuzah, a pendant, and so they go to the only Jewish person on the
Forgot
hill.
about that.
Pardon? You
I
forgot about
forgot.
that.
I forgot that the beginning starts with the guy in the hole.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
So they
Oh,
find
that
this mezuzah
started the
pen. They
whole
go
thing.
to the only Jewish person in the area, and they say, "What's this? Don't you know it's something Jewish?" Blah blah blah. And then they found it with a body. They don't know anything about the body. The Jewish guy that they approach doesn't know anything about it. Says he doesn't know anything about it. And the next day, huge storm comes through, all the evidence, everything's gone along with the Jew. And then we start the story. So we go back in time almost 30 years. Yeah, 30 years or so. And we start our story. So we meet Moshe and his wife Hona, or who will be his wife Hona. But basically, we come back to this small town and we meet the Jewish community, we meet the Black community, we meet the Italian community, meet the Polish community. There's a lot of immigrants and the white community, and somehow how they all end up intermingling, integrating, communicating with each other, the different sort of trials and tribulations. That sounds very trite. That's not what I meant. But like the different lived stories of these people. And I feel like Hona's character is really the heart of the story because she's who brings all the different communities together. Um, but at the same time, she's only in the story for a fairly brief period. But I feel like she kind of lasts. She kind of carries through her spirit, carries through it a little bit. I'm gonna kind of leave it there right now, and I want to hear what you guys have to say. But it would it's such a like how would you describe if someone asked you what's the story about? Because
Well, I
after the second reading, I have kind of a different answer. But anyway, go ahead, Carol.
okay. First of all, this book it is a very good read. I couldn't put it down. And what is it about? First of all, the book is a little bit about fiction, historical fiction, and has mystery. Yes, the characters, you wonder why all these descriptions of these characters, and then they get together. Okay, now terrific, good metaphors. And the story, I would say it's about love, it's friendship, betrayal. Now, it's Hannah strong. I think the strongest character here is Dodo, the deaf boy, I could tell you about all the other characters. Moshe is a weak one. Hannah was and the humor and the sarcasm about the good Christians. The good Christian, this doctor, and they talk about the good Christians and what he does, and this deaf boy is going to protect. But what I'm going to tell you first, after the strongest character is Dodo. I thought the relationship and the friendship, this deaf boy fostered a friendship with this boy who's so spasmodic, and they found a way to talk to each other.
Monkey
I
pants.
thought
Monkey, you're talking about Monkey Face, right?
Monkey
Face is
pants.
This is
Monkey
the
Pants,
end.
sorry.
Yes, I'm talking about the ending because this is really struck me, and
Right.
how this person was so abusive. I want to tell you something.
Son of
Douglas,
man, you mean?
yes,
Yeah,
I
with
thought
Robert.
this really incredible. To me, this deaf boy is the strongest character, even more than Connor, to me. And how he managed when in the face of abuse and whatever, somehow he managed to foster friendship. And Nate is a really interesting character.
Yeah.
We don't know him. They're all, but
They're all really interesting characters. So many of them. I'm
And
like,
what
I
about
want more.
but the
Paper.
humorous part,
All of them.
but the
You just
humor.
said something. You just said something, Katie. You
Sorry.
want more. I found the last 10 pages very disappointing because they just tied it all together. It's like he was told it's getting too long. You got
Okay.
your
Let's
and
come
I
back to
found
that
that like
but let's come back to that in a minute, Roseanne. Carol, sorry, I interrupted. I started the interruption. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Carol, go ahead and finish up.
Now, there's humor. There's a humorous part about the bullfrog in the mikveh. And this whole conversation is absolutely hilarious. Did any with this whole description about a bullfrog and what are they going to do about it? And these two little religious boys didn't know what they're talking about. So there's humor, there are biblical references. When what guy I forgot there's a fight and he takes out his eye, an eye for an eye,
That's
thing. There's
yeah.
so much in it. Anyway, I thought it's great book. I don't
Thanks,
know.
Carol. Now, okay, so I think we'll
sorry.
go, whoever wants to talk about it, we'll we'll give each person a chance to say their say, and then we can all talk on top of each other afterwards. Does that sound fair?
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Roseanne, go ahead.
Well, in 1967, I went to Israel for the first time to visit my Lithuanian family. We're Russian, so it's the same idea. And I got it. I got a real rude awakening. So this book is showing that too. There's a difference between the lower black people and the upper hill people, and there's a difference between German and the Eastern European. And it shows that in the book very, very, very well. For some people who don't know, it would be, what are they talking? But it does because I saw it in 1967. They're called Yekis. It's a terrible name. It's like the N word for Germans. And the reason is because the Israelis said that when they came to Israel, they expected to be treated like, because in Germany they didn't think that anything was going to happen to them because they were in the army. But they were the elite. They were enlightened. They were not as religious. They didn't live in ghettos. They were assimilated. And here they're with people who were all from Eastern Europe. So, and then you had the same thing with the black people in there, and with that town where you had the upper and the lower. And I found that so interesting because I just thought, wow, they brought it together. But what also bothered me is number one, the ending. I told you it was very too pat. But what he never acknowledges where he get his Yiddish from. I speak Yiddish, but it's kitchen Yiddish. So he was using words and not translating them, which I found interesting when he talked about the synagogue. He was using words like chevra, which he didn't he put in brackets. And I'm like, that's an unusual word to be used by somebody who isn't Jewish. It's like a word. I don't can't explain it, but he never acknowledges who his mentor was. He talked about him being a counselor and all that stuff, but he never acknowledges people who helped him. And I couldn't understand that because I mean, was he like Louis Armstrong, raised in a Jewish neighborhood and spoke Yiddish? I don't know. I just found that very interesting. How come he never acknowledged anything? He never acknowledged where he got all the translations and everything.
Or the Italian or the like,
Whatever.
and from all the
Very
different
little
cultures.
Italian.
But all the different cultures, like, I mean, I felt really integrated into, like, really just dropped down into. And it's interesting too that you say clearly when I said, "Oh, we'll each have our say and then we'll all discuss it." I guess I'd like to absolve myself from that rule. But one of the things that you said about the different sort of categories of Jewish people, and like, I mean, he acknowledges that in that too earlier, right? When Moshe has the I can't remember which musician it is. And he says, I didn't realize there was so much Spanish music or Spanish people in the area. And he says, see, you see Spanish and I see, and he starts like the person that he's talking to is saying, like, I see Ecuadorians, I see Mexicans, I see, and he's saying these different people from different areas in the same way that the Jewish community is then subdivided, in the same way that the Black community is subdivided, in the same way, like, and this is, I think, I thought that was a really clever and
Very.
really integrative way of him to do that, of like everyone sees themselves or everyone sees each separate group as one big group, and yet each group within themselves is also subdivided. Um, and yet also it was like this perspective of this is how white people see all of us. And also, anyway, no, I will and also later. Okay. Okay. Next.
Okay, I'll go. I
Rhoda.
just want to say that this book to me is a perfect example of why you should read a book twice sometimes. I really feel that. I had this book in September at my synagogue book club. And I read it and I was just overwhelmed with all the characters and the subplots and everything. I was like completely overwhelmed. And I went to the book club meeting and it was different than here. I like this one much better because a speaker who stood up for an hour and a half and talked about the book. Well, I was more confused after she finished than when I finished the book. And then I just put it away and I said, my head is spinning. And then you said, we have to read this book for January. And I
And you
said,
were
I
like,
know I read this
no.
book before. Yes. And I got it, but I never was able to get it back from the library. That's right next to me. It's still on the list. Like that's how long you have to wait. So I had to go online and I read all about the book. There was a wonderful podcast, 45 minutes for first half of the book and 45 minutes for second half. Literary Society, and I was able to reread the book almost through their eyes because I couldn't get the book at the library. And really, I just saw it from such a different perspective because I had went through everything again, all the characters and everything. And it's like what Carol said with Monkey Pants and Dodo and things. And it was just so wonderful the second time around than the first time around. It's like what you say, this book really should be read twice, I think. You get so much more out of it. I don't know if anybody feels the same way. And I think Carol Blank, I think I told you that Katie's having us read the Heaven and Earth bookstore. I read it. I don't know. I didn't and here it ended up completely different. I just thought that was very interesting with this book because there's so many nuances in it.
I like the way so many different communities got together. Like it was a small town
Yeah.
and yet Hannah got them all together. She showed
Mm,
empathy and sympathy and kindness.
right.
And I just loved the characters as far as that went. But
Very
we can
timely, in a
learn.
very timely time in our life, with,
Exactly. We can learn from this book how you can get
yeah.
along regardless of financial, color, religion. I liked it very much. I thought it was
I'm
a
going to
good
send it
lesson.
to Trump. I'm going to send it to Trump with a little note.
He can't read, my dear. He doesn't know how to read.
Ah, good
Maybe
for you,
maybe it's a
Roseanne.
graphic. Do you think they have it in a
You're
graphic?
on my side.
Right.
If
Unbelievable.
everybody else feels the same way.
Anyhow, I thought it was well chosen. I thought that the title was a riot. I mean, when I saw the title, Katie, I said, now what are we reading? But
Katie, you hit the mark all the time, I think. I really do.
very good. Well done. Very well done.
Yeah.
Was it your first time reading it, Carol?
Carol
With an
Blanc,
E? Yeah.
Carol Blanc only reads a book once.
Okay. So you hadn't read this one before?
No, no.
I'm
So you see,
surprised. I'm
there you
surprised
go.
about that with you.
Mm-mm. No time, too busy reading, reading. But it was well chosen and timely, I thought. And I just
Yes,
really
absolutely.
enjoyed.
Very
Now,
timely.
if we could
So
only bring that out into the world and get other people to be so kind and understanding, and who cares what you are.
we could, yeah. It's funny, right? Because there's Heidi's walked away, so but I'll ask her if she wants to say something as well when she comes back. Um, but one of the things that I noticed, should I start with that or should I go? No, first I'm going to talk about the things that you guys have talked about. So one is that Carol with an E, you mentioned how you loved the title. So why do you think they chose this title? Why do you think this is the title of the book, The Heaven and Earth Grocery Store?
Well,
Yes,
Oh,
people
let's
like
do that.
The grocery store was on top of the hill. Maybe it's closer to God. I don't know. Did it have a religious? I
That might
don't
be
know.
why
I don't know.
they called the grocery store that. But why do you think this is our title of the book?
It's
Well,
true.
this,
wasn't she the one who brought them all together? Wasn't she the core?
That's kind of how I feel. I'm not sure
me,
though.
well, and
I
I
don't have
looked
an
at it
answer,
as
by the way.
only because you asked the question. But
Yeah.
the good people went to heaven and the shit went to earth.
Uh-huh.
Doc Roberts landed in the earth.
Uh-huh.
Oh, that's a very good point. I think that's a very good point, Roseanne. Yeah, you never know. Could be. Hmm.
What do you think, Carol, without an E?
I think there's a relationship in Jewish religion between heaven and earth. Um, oh yeah, I forgot. Yeah, heaven and earth. About I forgot. Yes, there's something religion. There's something connection in the Jewish religion
Mm.
between heaven and earth, and it is we could yes die we die between we're buried in the earth and something about heaven. I'm not sure,
Mm.
but there's a significance why it's called the heaven and earth and not the grocery store. There is a significance, and I'm not sure why.
Oh, I think again, yeah, I'm not, it's not about why the grocery store, there's the question as well, of course, of why they called the grocery store that. But I think that is partly like that's a Hona question, or well, Hona's dad, right? But I feel like the reason why, because I'm always interested in why books are called, like why they end up with the titles that they end up with. And I think that sometimes it's very deliberate, and I think that other times, it'll have one working title and then that gets changed and that gets workshopped and it gets changed. And sometimes it's because of saleability and other times for other things. I think the Heaven and Earth grocery store, it's a distinctive title. It's not something that you would mistake for something else. But I am with Carol E. in that I kind of felt like, do you remember when we read um uh Hello Hello Beautiful? Do you
Hmm.
remember that one? Um And we talked in that one. I did see a little bit of a similarity between Hello Beautiful and the Heaven and Earth grocery store, not in terms of content or anything like that, but in terms of the continued presence of a character who's absent. So, Hello Beautiful, that title for the book comes from something that one of the characters says to his daughters. And that's how it he
Right,
calls
the
his,
father.
says to his daughter, yeah, the dad. And
Right,
he
right, yeah,
dies really, really early on in the
right.
book.
It's
In
true.
this
Yeah.
book, The Heaven and Earth grocery store, also, it's like the reason why I said so, Carol without an E, you were saying you found Dodo to be a stronger character than Hona. Now, I found it's not that I don't necessarily disagree. I think arguments can be made either way, but I found that Hona was the heart of the book. And that even though she's not in it the entire time, like her character, like it's again, it's this like presence of hers that is interwoven. And it's so that she is who I feel like draws all of the, or has drawn, has connected, has woven the other characters together and how they continue to work towards, like, even at the end,
Mhm.
when there are kind of several little, um, we'll say, activities or like projects happening, right? So there's at Penhurst, there's the water for the mikvah, there is the Doc Roberts thing with, like, all of those things are connect, like the common link is still Hana. And I thought that was interesting that, like, again, it's a character who is there and then is not, but she kind of continues all the way through.
I don't think we're going to get an answer as far as the title goes because
No,
the
definitely not.
father was the one who named it and he
Yeah.
died. But
Yeah.
there had to have been, as Carol without the E said, there had to have been some religion, there was religion in there.
Yeah.
And I mean, the fact that frogs and mikvah, I think that's the funniest thing of all because frogs, and you know what? Frogs have a symbol. They were part of the plagues from Egypt, when the Jews were leaving Egypt. And you could just, I mean, it was just so ridiculous. Frogs in a mikvah. But I do agree,
Not
Carol, that it's
ridiculous. It
definitely,
can happen. It can happen. It's fresh water. It's not ridiculous.
But it's ridiculous as in that it's silly. Like
yeah,
it's
it's
like
funny, right?
So,
Exactly,
so I
exactly.
like I happen you I still would like to know if people what do they feel about the ending because first of all Isaac I thought was a very interesting character. He was a heart too. He was a
mm.
heart of this not only with Hannah but he was he
Um,
was an action. I found it
he was an
interesting.
actor in it, but I wouldn't say that Isaac was the heart at all. I would bring up
No,
Isaac
but he
more in
had heart.
relation to, especially with the again earlier, because Carol without an E, you also mentioned that you found Moshe weak. And the first time that I read it, I would have, like, if we were having this meeting after the first time that I read it, I would have been like, yep, I agree. Very weak-willed. Like, without Hannah, without Isaac, without, it was just, but actually, the second time I read it, it was interesting because the way that Isaac talks about Moshe and the way that Nate talks about Moshe, like, they see his strength in his kindness, right? And that as it's a different way of thinking about strength and continuity. I'd like to find out, and to bring this back then also to what you're saying, Roseanne, about the ending. The first time I read it, the ending, I was like, it definitely crept up on me, but I didn't take issue with it the second time I read it. Yeah, I definitely found I felt like it was too fast. And I actually reread the prologue um after I was done. So, and I thought, actually, that would have been a really cool way to end it too, is to have that again talking about, because like we don't find out really, like I want to know more about this whole like ma I want to know more about a lot of things. I feel like it needed it needed to be a two-part book because it would have been too big otherwise. But I mean, part of that is the scope, right? Handling so many
Many
different
characters.
characters.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
like what what is up with like Malachi's really interesting magical significance, right? Like he's a mystic, right? And his like his baking and his like his dancing, his
I have
he's an
no idea.
interesting magical elfin kind of character. Like he's like Puck. He's like Puck from a Shakespeare from Midsummer Night's
He's
Dream.
like Schlemiel, Schlemazel. I don't know what you call him in Yiddish. There's a word for him.
Yeah.
I don't know what that's a ne'er-do-well. He does, I mean, but he had good intentions, but
But
he's,
he's not, yeah, it's not in there. He doesn't, yeah, it's interesting. But it's also
Buys a
like,
bakery and yet has no idea how to bake. And he
and
makes
he
the
thinks
worst.
it's good,
He
and
buys
everyone else is
bread.
like, this is terrible. But then, like, also, then,
Exactly.
like, what is like, there are a lot of things that sort of start and then it gets sort of dropped. So,
Me
oftentimes
too.
in books, I like that. I like being able to use my imagination to find out what happened. And this time, and granted, again, it's the second time that I've read it. So maybe I'm being more critical than I should be. But one of the things that I would like, it feels a little bit more like it's left hanging. Like we have all kinds of descriptions about the replacement of the pipe, for example, at the end, but we don't have descriptions about exactly how Nate gets Dodo out. It's weird,
that's
right?
right. He kills the guy and then nothing happens. He
I
kills
liked that
Stan.
though. I kind of liked that there wasn't any prevarication with that. There was no like, or like a big follow up or anything. It was just like this needed to be done. It got done, and it was done too. Like we had,
But then
but
what happened? How did he get him out? Like you said, how did he get him out of the
Dodo
hospital? He carried him out.
through.
What?
Well, we can only assume, right? We can only assume that it's like Miggy's like her when she was showing them the map in the pie, which please, I mean, Miggy, I believe all the magical things about her, but how do you make a map in a piece of pie?
Out
I
of yeah, exactly.
like enough for
I
someone
couldn't
to
figure
follow,
that
which
out.
Nate totally does as well, right?
But why was she doing that? I found that interesting because she knew that if there was an investigation, she would get in trouble. So this
Mm.
way, she was trying to do it all in code of some
Well, it
sort.
was like so that she was because her thing was honesty. So she was like, I can honestly say I was there eating pie. Like, and if someone's like, did you draw a topographical map in some sweet potato pie?
Yeah.
An adequate response to that would
But
be like, that sounds pretty ridiculous.
what was what was the author's intention of that with the pie? He must know how the readers would react to that and certain things. And what was his intention?
Well, I'm
What
not
was
the
his
author,
intention?
Rona. I don't know what his
No,
intention was.
I got
But
the intention. It's not the
Like,
first time that people do that. No, he did it because he she had to protect herself.
yeah.
And so that's why it was all in code. I mean, the pie part I didn't understand. Who knows?
Well, it's like
You
how
know what I
she's
found interesting? I found interesting is I don't know where it is in the book, and I didn't feel like going back, but I would say in two sentences they had how the thing was done from Isaac to this to the poppy to this to the
yeah.
and that's the part that bothered me because of all in two or three sentences we got to know that this one that to this and then the money went to this and the money went to that the money went to this and then we did the bike and then we did it and
it was
all that
very
in two
rushed.
sentences
It
and
was
that
rushed.
bothered me.
Well, and there's
That's
also
right.
the lost second page of that Fatty receives from Bernice, right? Bernice gives him the envelope with
That's right.
the letter and the money in it, and he opens it, and there's $500 and there's $400 in a second page, and we never find out what happens with the second page, what it had to do with. And it's all Nate's just sort of like, yeah, actually, this makes sense, and just
Yeah,
kind of figure it's
I Sorry. Okay.
No, no, go ahead, Carol.
Number one, our response. I speak Yiddish also. Now, what it is, he shouldn't. This Yiddish, Chevri, wrong book. He didn't. He can't. You can't explain.
Right.
The word is chevra. Chevra really means are the big shots of a synagogue, and we call them the chevra. It's really maybe you should not have used this word without. You can't explain it because
Exactly.
it does. Chevra means a group of people, but it means more, right? In Yiddish, when they start the chevra, these big shots are discussing the mikveh. They're called the chevra. So again, about Yiddish, yes, I agree with you. But I also want to tell you about the author. Apparently, I read that the author himself has a Jewish mother, Polish mother, and African American father. So he lived he lived with these two cultures. Yes, I read about this book in online, and so he knew a little about. Next, apparently, he worked in a camp for these kind of disabled children, and he himself saw how to treat them and what happened. So in the book, they sent him to a camp for these kind of kids. But I want to ask a question. Why do you think that Hannah should have kept this dodo against the law? Now, Hannah, yes, she was it, but she imagined that this boy was her child. Did she went too far in her imagination? You know, she can't have children. I'm not sure. I'm asking the question anybody thinks about was right. As a religious Jew, she broke the law. On the other hand, this boy needed a home. Well, maybe.
Well, it was in her character, no? To be so kind? Wasn't
To
it part
be,
of her
yeah, it
character?
was less about the like this is something that came up, I think, many times was about this idea of who makes the law. Because it wasn't about like she was breaking the law in terms of, the government law, but not like
It
she was
happened in World War
following.
II.
Because they were sending him to a place. He was
Yeah.
just deaf. He wasn't. There
And
was
that they were
nothing
going
wrong
to
with
take him away from his
him.
family
Exactly,
anyway.
to a mental retardation facility, and she knew what was going to happen to him.
Yeah.
The law was bullshit.
They
Pardon me,
The
you
were,
know.
war,
I think
the
she
wars were
and Nate
hidden.
and Addie were all acting out of righteousness.
Well,
And
this
Bernie.
this is this during the war. It happened all the time. Righteous Gentiles against the law
Yeah,
hid Jews.
that's right. That's
Get
right.
worse than that, you were dead. Here they were
For
all going to be hung. Here they could have been hung by the Ku Klux Klan or whatever, but
mm,
it doesn't matter. The
but
point is that I didn't feel anything wrong with that. Yes, she felt close, but she didn't take him away from his culture or anything like that. But she hid him because of the goodness of her heart.
sorry,
She
Carol, you
saw
were
the
gonna Carol was gonna say something. Go ahead.
but her imagination was run. She it bothered me that in her imagination she imagined this is a substitute for a child she couldn't have.
But
You
how do
know,
you feel about adoption, Carol?
oh, adoption would be fine if she wanted to adopt him. It would be fine.
So someone I ask because someone that I know who adopted a child, this was a long time ago, um, and then her husband died, like a few years after they had adopted their daughter. And she said, it breaks my heart for a lot of reasons. She said, but one of the reasons is because like this is my daughter. I know I didn't carry her, but this is my daughter, and I feel like I have another child out there. And she said, but I would never be, approved sort of to adopt a second child, right? But this is the thing is that with Hannah and Dodo, like she may not have been his birth mother. And yes, they from different backgrounds and but like this idea, especially like with the amount of mysticism that's in this book, that this is kind of her child. Like there is a resonance here as well between them, I thought.
You don't necessarily have to carry a child
Of
to
course.
have a child that you just adopt. I mean, during the war, there were a lot of children and they were fatherless, motherless, and then people just took them in and they became their children. I mean, the adoption or something, that's just a legal thing.
What makes a family?
A family makes
Mhm.
whatever comes together and
I mean,
share love and everything, that's a family.
yeah, because I
Don't
mean,
invent
it's
it.
sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
No, it's okay.
I
It's
thought
just
Bernice was very interesting with all her children from all different fathers. I
yeah.
thought that was interesting because they didn't. Where did she get the money? Like where, like
We
how did
never
she live with
found
all those
out
kids and
about
yet
her and why she had all
protected this
those
black boy
children.
too?
We do learn
She
that there are
protected this
three
black boy too.
fathers. We learn there are
But
three fathers to her brood of children, but we don't hear much about Bernice. And we don't like other than when she was a child. We know
right.
that she's Fatty's sister. We know that she was Hannah's friend. We
At the end,
know she has all
at
these
the end,
kids. We know that she has found God. That's something else that comes up, right? And she's upstanding, this upstanding citizen. Um, she doesn't sing anymore. She doesn't like she's a part and yet a part of. It's she's an interesting character too. And who had mentioned Paper earlier?
I did, I think.
Yeah,
I mentioned, yeah.
Paper. She's a cool
Yeah,
character too.
very. Oh, wow. That's an they could have a book on her alone, it could have been a whole
Well, and if we're
chapter.
gonna gossip a little bit, like Miggy says, oh, to Paper, like, oh, and that man you're considering marrying, talking about Fatty. And I'm like, oh, I mean, I don't dislike Fatty, but at the same time, what recommends him?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, in the end, Bernice plays a really important part. She agrees to hide Dodo.
Yeah, yeah.
In the end, she's quiet and
Well, in the medium, in the middle.
in the middle. And in the end, she agrees to hide this boy among
Yeah.
her. Yeah. So you never know.
And it's also interesting too, because the first time that I read it, my interpretation was the spy, that the state sends over, the black
oh
guy
God, yes.
who is like
Find Dodo.
that,
Chauffeur.
yeah. So the first time that I read it as him being like still kind of an agent of the state. And the second time I read it as him like being like, I was never going to report him anyway. I was just taking my day of being paid to like drive around, etc. And then also when they talked about Reverend, uh, the Reverend, his name,
Briggs,
Scrub, it wasn't Scrups.
I think it was. Reverend
Okay.
Sprigg.
Yes,
Briggs.
Spriggs, because it was Scrupp was with Scrupicallis. Those were the shoemakers. But yeah, Reverend Spriggs, the first time I read it, I read him as being like the snitch who said what happened. But the second time I read it, that's a little bit less clear in that he said what
No, he doesn't. He
happened.
didn't.
Exact. Well, it's like he said what happened, but to someone who was not a bad guy, sort of thing. So yeah, interesting. All of the moving
Because
parts.
he was black. That's the part I couldn't understand. Reverend Spriggs was black.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is they let him do the parades and everything, and he had all, he could do anything he wanted. And that part I couldn't figure it out. He's like the only black person among all the white people, and that's part I didn't
Well,
quite make it. Like he was invited to all these things, and how did he get to?
they talk
Like,
about
what
that.
church was? Yeah,
They talk about that as being like basically that's his job. That's what they say because
yeah,
he said they say that's his job is to be like basically the social the like the PR guy. The
token.
one who will be yeah, exactly. Exactly.
I like the part, before this guy, it was Doc Roberts. We don't know who fell in, but the hint when he says when they changed coats, the red coat, the blue coat,
Yeah.
and they say this is going to be very significant
Yeah.
later. It's kind of
Yeah.
foreshadowing, and we don't
They say,
know.
"Oh, it doesn't matter," but it did. Yeah.
It did.
Boom, boom,
That's
boom,
right.
I don't get how.
boom.
So
I
you
didn't
keep
understand
reading.
taking the mezuzah in the first place. I couldn't understand that part. How
You
did
can
the doctor
understand
get
what?
the mezuzah? How did he get the mezuzah? I mean, he tore it off her neck while
Yeah.
he was raping her. I mean, I don't get it. Why would he? I mean, I don't really
Attempted
understand.
raping her. But
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
well,
but
assaulting
yeah,
her.
no, that's what comes up also several times. He didn't know how he got it. He didn't know how he got
Yeah.
it. And so like we're
He
none
was
of us can know
assaulting
that
her,
either.
and
What did you say? I didn't hear what she said.
he was assaulting her, and it must have, it came off.
Yeah.
He was whatever, and yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Scary.
What else did we want to talk about before our time is up? We've got 9 minutes left, guys.
Did you hear of
Why
anybody
did
when
he
I
bring?
mentioned about this at the library? One of the librarians said, "Oh,
Not
you have to
about
like it
that.
or not
Let's
like."
talk about the book for a second, Roseanne.
I'm
Rona,
talking about the book. I'm talking about
Okay.
the book. I asked at the library what people thought about the book. That when and one of the librarians said some people said it was boring, and I can't figure that out.
huh.
Boring. It was anything but boring. It was.
A lot of people I find have trouble with stories told from multiple perspectives. That's one thing that people have trouble with. And another one is non-linear. So like if they can't see exactly where something is going, like where a storyline is going, then some people have trouble with that. Like they can't keep it's like someone weaving, right? This is very much a weaving-y but kind of book. If you can't keep in mind where each thread is, then you may lose in like you kind of forget about that part and so you lose interest and you can't follow the plot. Maybe.
Well, that's
I
what
don't know.
happened with
I
me the
I
first
haven't heard
time.
anyone talk about it being boring, but I have
I found it confusing when
yeah,
I first read it. There was so many characters. That's another thing. There's so many people to think about and how
yeah.
they connected, and you have to really concentrate. I think this book has to be read and concentrated. Well, it's not an easy read. That's what I think.
Yeah,
If you want an easy read,
I found it very tiring
Mm,
because a
Mhm.
lot of stuff was just
That's
left
true.
at loose ends. And I said, but where is this going to go?
yeah.
Oh, I found it like
Yeah, exactly.
somebody sort of threw out all these marbles, that
Yeah.
The
totally,
They did.
marbles again.
there were all these marbles and they were just rolling around and I had to sort of get them together.
Shoe
I found
people.
it
The shoe
very,
people
very
ended up to be the shoe
This
people ended up to be at the end quite interesting. The shoe lady, the twins or whatever they were, the shoe
I
people, because they could trade something. They traded, I forget what it was, but they traded
New shoes
shoes for what
for the union
they what?
workers. Yeah, shoes
Yeah,
for the
whatever.
union workers.
Yeah,
I
that's people, the ones who got the kid out, them out. I found that interesting. Like they were, who are these people? Somewhere, what I forget which one was not nice, and then the one and the Marvin and whatever Irving or whatever.
Irvin
Yeah,
Marv.
she's right. I agree with that. It was hard, and I haven't tend to spend a minute, so I found it hard to concentrate on all those characters. But I found the book one,
Yeah.
and that takes a lot.
I oh, sorry. I think this author His writing is so good. His metaphors, the Carol puts the two communities together. He's so good that I would like to read more books by this author. The
Mhm.
His writing is to me is incredible.
Yeah.
Thank you for introducing me to another good author for me.
I
Thank you.
I
would,
agree.
I'm not, I'll just take the credit. Sure. So it's all me. Uh,
Isn't his famous book The Color of Water?
that was his
What was
first.
the
Yeah. The Color of Water. And it's a memoir.
what was that about again, Katie? What was that
It's,
about again, that
it's
book?
about
It
his
was amazing.
heritage.
Just I
And like trying to find his place. Like, so Carol was talking a little bit earlier about his parentage, and
Mhm.
it's him exploring that and trying to figure out, or like,
Excellent. I read it
yeah,
many years ago. It was an older book, but it was
yeah,
excellent. It was
yeah,
everybody was reading.
yeah.
He doesn't
I
thank his
really
parents
enjoyed
for
it.
having him.
I was really impressed with the voices um of his characters. I found they were all, I think it's really hard to have to write distinct voices, or it's not been a common thing for me to read distinct voices. I felt like all of his different characters in the different communities, no one he wasn't getting he didn't it didn't feel to me like he got lazy in the development of their personalities. Like you could tell each person had a very distinct voice. Um, my criticism would be same with Roseanne, is that I felt like honestly probably I know a lot of times when we talk about I rarely say that I think the book could be shorter. I feel like usually it should be about the right length. This one I felt like probably could have an extra 200 or so pages just to like, or like
He tied it up very
companion books or
quickly.
something to talk more about like all of the different characters and their, like, I wanted to know more. I felt like I would have rather, I think, a little bit the end instead of going on and like that kind of did its, I feel like that was paying lip service to tying things up in neat little bows. It's like, oh, and then Nate and Natty did get back together and they did live happily ever after, and Dodo did too, and he had a family and a farm and kids and la 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 la. But it's like, but we started in 1972, and I would have liked for that to come back or maybe to end with that. I don't know. But I've read a couple of different reviews that talk about the how the book opens with a mystery, which I never really found very mysterious personally. I liked the opening of the book, but it again, it the second time reading it had left me with more questions than just
I
the
love the
general
last
sense of,
word. I
sorry,
love the last words
yeah.
because he got the last words. Monkey
Uh,
Pants got the last word. I
See, and
love
I kind of felt that was a little stay gold pony
I
boy.
loved it.
I could
I
have done
loved
with.
I loved it.
Okay.
I want to look one more thing.
Yeah.
Nate, Nate's character. We see there's rage in him.
Yes.
In the end, he has to kill this dictator, this horrid person,
Yep.
to get Dodo out.
Yep.
We see in the end his rage comes out in the end, in a way. Yes?
So I was going to say what I thought was interesting about that was that we see his rage, like we're introduced to his rage sort of like three-quarters of the way through. We're introduced to his rage in like, and it's all suppressed, right? It's all suppressed.
Exactly.
And then we find out about his life as a young man and what lands him in prison and all this stuff like towards the end. But when he, and I would go so far as to say, like when oh no, I won't color it with judgment. I'll just say when he kills Son of Man at the end, he doesn't do it out of rage. This is one of the interesting things. He knows, well, he doesn't even know yet. He hasn't seen Dodo. He's heard from Miggy what kind of person Son of Man is. He sees Son of Man attacking Bullis, I think is the Eggman's name, right? The Eggman.
The Eggman.
And he comes and saves him. But when he saves him, he saves Bullis, kills Son of Man. There's a look, there's an exchange between the two of them that they recognize each other, similarities in each other. And what he says to Son of Man, even though Son of Man is twisted, he's evil, according to Miggy, right? And what we know of Son of Man, none of it is good. But what Nate says to him as he's killing him is, it's not your fault.
That's very interesting. Yeah.
It's like he kills him out of pity and sympathy and empathy. Meanwhile, they have this recognition between each other, and Nate, even after the way that he lived his life that landed him in prison, still was a good man. What are we as the readers supposed to draw from that? Like,
Okay, how about I ask you the question? They don't explain why everybody was so afraid of him in the bar, in the prison. Why were they? Nobody ever crossed him. But what's interesting is how many people knew that Nate was in the bottom of the cart. I knew something was something. How did you?
the
You
horse
never
knew.
hear that Nate was
Titus, the
sneaking into
horse
the
knew,
cart.
that's for sure. Remember Titus laboring?
Exactly. But how many people suspected something? I said to myself, "Uh-oh, I think he's going to be here." But then we never know until, like how come?
Yeah.
Like where?
Again,
How
a
many people
second read
suspected?
gives you a
Anybody
lot of
suspected here?
indications. The second read gives you a lot of indications. Like
Oh,
there's quite a bit of foreshadowing. You're like, ah. So I don't remember the first time I read it if I was like how certain I was, but I was pretty sure. I think I thought that he was there because why would he travel all that way? And how else would Dodo get out? You know? And why else were we following the Eggman other than that something was going to happen? Yeah.
Yep.
So last thoughts on the book for everyone?
Good.
Loved it.
Well chosen.
I'm just surprised. I'm just surprised he didn't acknowledge even his family. Well, how he knew Yiddish. I'm surprised that usually you acknowledge your editor, you acknowledge people who have,
I
you
liked
know,
that it was such a short, like it was a very brief thing of acknowledgments and it was so to the point. I mean, this is also his one, two, three, four, five, six, eighth book. So maybe um a lot of the rest of the is explained in other book
where
other
was their
acknowledgments
acknowledgement?
or
Where's their acknowledgement here?
in the after
I didn't see
sorry,
any
the
acknowledgement.
afterward.
Well, he
Yeah,
explains
acknowledgments when he talks about like the whole reason. So like he had his dedication at the beginning to Cy
yeah.
Friend, and then he in the acknowledgments gives like the a little bit a broader
I
thing
looked
about
up
what a
Variety Club.
yeah.
I looked up Variety Club. I've heard of it. But I didn't realize it's all over the world.
Mm.
It's not just it's still in
Yeah.
existence. I've heard of it, and
Huh.
quite an accomplishment. And what's interesting is they don't mention that 99% of probably the people involved were Jewish. That's what it
Yeah.
sounds like, which I find so interesting.
Mm.
The entertainers at that time, the vaudeville guy people and everything. Really, that part the fact that he was a counselor for so many years, it must have affected, which is great. It's
Yeah.
wonderful. What an experience.
Okay, everybody. So that was our talk about that. But next month, we'll roll the dice. We'll see this one. I haven't read it yet. Next month, we are going to be talking about Yellowface, and that's on the 11th of March. Normally, we do it in the
Oh, yeah, I
first.
ordered it at the library.
Normally, we have it the first Tuesday of the month, but I'll be away that week. So it'll be the second Tuesday
Oh,
of the month for us. It'll be on the 11th of March.
I guess you'll have to reserve the book.
Yeah, you have to
Yeah,
reserve the book.
Don't forget.
for each of you, with the exception of Rona.
Pardon? Me?
Yeah, I've you know what? I just reserved the book. It's like March it's like the middle of March. I reserved it. I don't even know if I'm going to get it. I'll have to maybe
Okay.
just download it on my Kindle. I don't know. I'll have to see.
Heidi,
It's very hard.
Why
Heidi, what's
don't
that,
you
Heidi?
Pardon?
You have your hand up?
I don't know what your question was.
Would
I
you like
raised
me to
my hand.
set aside a copy of Yellowface for
That's
you?
why I'm raising my hand.
Done. Will do.
I hope I can make
You
it to
have
the
a
library.
large print, I'll take that one.
Okay, I'll see what I've
You have a
got.
large print?
Rona,
Put-
have you
unless it's a
ever
fat
tried
book.
to get books on Hoopla
Send it to
or
me, Katie. Send
Cloud
it to me.
Library?
Just remember that if it's a
Hoopla.
big book, don't give it to me on big print. Like it's so heavy when they're like I don't know, like if it's a smaller book, fine.
Okay.
Rona, there's Hoopla and there's Cloud Library. If you can't
Hoopla
get
and
your
Cloud
book,
Library.
you should
It's
try
true.
and
But
get
it's
them.
right
Doesn't
beside the
cost you
Barbara
anything.
Frum Library. And
What's that, Rona?
I'm gonna look and see. Maybe
Yeah, look,
I'll get
because
lucky
you've
with
got,
it. I may get lucky with it. I never know, you know.
okay. I'm going to stop the
Hmm?
recording, so I'll say thank you to everybody
Thanks,
here
Cindy.
and anyone watching
Okay.
at home. And I'll see you all next month.
Sure hope so. Thank you.
I,
Have a
I
good
Thank you
checked
holiday.
very
on
much.
Pleasure.
hibiscus.
Wonderful.
Checked hibiscus. It looks good.